Thank you everyone for joining today's webinar hosted by Share Cafe. Apologies, we were a little bit late due to a technical glitch. I'm David Tasker and I'll be hosting the webinar today. As we enter the festive season, we'd like to thank the thousands of attendees who've participated in these weekly events this year. You have made these weekly events as successful as they have been, and I'm confident we've helped you uncover and engage with some genuine hidden gems. Speaking of hidden gems, this week, the Share Cafe team have found another batch of genuine hidden gems. While you may have tuned in to watch one or two of the companies presenting, I recommend you watch all of the presentations. It is the companies you don't know that could be that hidden gem you've been looking to invest in. Add them to your watch list and see how they perform over the coming months. And don't forget, as you're listening to the presentations, if you have questions, submit them using the Q&A function on the screen, and we will put them to the presenters for you. Right, let's get into our first presentation. First, we'll hear from ActivePort, ASX code ATB, which has a market cap of $39.6 million, almost 37, almost 40, sorry. ActivePort Group provides a software-defined networking tool and an SD-WAN to help companies run their technology their way and facilitate global connectivity. We welcome Karim, Nejaim, CEO. Karim, over to you.
Thank you very much, David. Yes, my name is Karim Nejaim, and I'm the MD and CEO of ActivePort Group. And before I get into my presentation, I wanted to give a little background on myself, why I'm here and why I'm at ActivePort. I was 20 to 25 years in IT and telecommunications, the last 20 of which was with Optus and with Telstra. I held a group vice president role with the Singtel group between Optus and Singtel. And I finished up at Telstra at the beginning of last year, where I was executive director of product engineering, building all of Telstra's products across all technologies and across all segments. And I decided to get out of large corporate and do some board roles. I was introduced to ActivePort. I was offered a board role by the chairman, but started working with the team around about July, August last year, and discovered a technology capability that I think can change the way connectivity and telecommunications is done globally. ActivePort makes money two ways. We make money out of the services we sell, but of most interest to investor community like yourselves is the high margin monthly reoccurring revenue we make from our software. And so today I won't do a deep dive on the software we have and the technology, but what I will stay with is purely the software side, explain where we're at, explain the market we're moving into, and give you an overview without the deep dive of the tech. So if I could have the first slide. As I said, what we are about is connecting the world, making it simple globally. And so we sell software to telecommunications companies and enterprise and connect those companies all around the world with our global edge capability, our network all around the world. If I can have the next slide, please. To give everyone an idea of the market we're playing in, as David mentioned in the introduction, we produce software for orchestration. We produce software to connect cloud. We produce software in SD-WAN, which is software-defined wide area networking. ActivePort is at the middle of two of the fastest growing areas in enterprise networking globally. The first is SD-WAN. And as you can see on the screen, Gartner expects SD-WAN to grow at 76% CAGR for the next 5 years. Similarly, cloud-based computing will grow at 50% for the next 5 years. So we're at the joining point in making networking globally simple, cloud connectivity simple, and hanging all of this together really simply from a single pane of glass. So on the next slide, you'll see why I was so excited when I first saw what ActivePort did. It won't be apparent if you haven't spent most of your career in technology, but what we have at ActivePort in our software is unique. Being able to control hardware, switches and routers, interconnect carriers like Console Connect, Equinix, Vocus, and others, and cloud providers, all from one single view. So you can build network connectivity all the way from an office in Tokyo to an office in London in one screen, integrate cloud services. And what we're ultimately about is helping telecommunications customers, the enterprise customers that we get through those telcos, and our enterprise customers have a single place to take away all of that complexity in dealing with technology across a city, across a country, or across the world. So on to the next slide, please. One thing I wanted to make very clear to everybody is our model is that we sell via managed service providers and telecommunications companies. Yes, we've started doing some work in enterprise, but what we have found is globally a huge amount of interest in our software from managed service providers, i.e. those that provide services locally, and telecommunications companies all around the world. So at the moment, we have a pipeline of 150 managed service providers around the world. We have a number of telecommunications companies we're working with around the world across our 8 global sales zones. And to make it clear, our customers end up being the customers of those telecommunications companies or managed service providers. The reason we're attractive is that we have super high quality software that's as good as anybody else's in the world from a software-defined networking perspective, a unique capability around our orchestration, and extremely well priced in the market globally on SD-WAN. And one of the things we do, which is very unusual in the market, is that we white label our software for use by a telecommunications company or a managed service provider. So if I'm company X selling to my customers, I don't have ActivePort SD-WAN I'm selling X SD-WAN to their customers. So it makes it very sticky for the customers of those managed service providers and telecommunications companies. So on to the next slide for me, please. One of the things that we found as we started working on our software and selling it was that we had to move very quickly to a position where we could deliver anywhere in the world. So we have aggregators, which are essentially points of coordination spread all around the world, so we can access our customers globally across Africa, South America, Australia, Southeast Asia. These points of presence are unlike some of our competition in that they are cloud-based routers, essentially, or cloud-based management points. We can turn these up and down in a matter of hours and put them near our customers where required. We very quickly found out we had to move to a global footprint, and quickly. On the next slide, you'll see how we're utilizing that global footprint. So one of our key partners and a company through which we are selling our SD-WAN product is PCCW Global. PCCW Global is a key partner for us to get all of that reach globally. And for those who don't know, PCCW Global is one of the biggest carriers and telecommunications companies in the world. Our CTO, Mark Middleton, was with the CEO of PCCW Global yesterday on a conference held out of Hawaii to explain what we're doing in automation and what we're doing around orchestration and SD-WAN all around the globe. Radian Arc is our present biggest customer for orchestration in the world. Radian Arc are rolling out their edge gaming capability globally now, and we have our software coordinating that for the gaming platform all around the world. And they're also helping us with sales into Asia and into North America. But on the right-hand side of the slide, you can see we have an increasing number of partners that we're working with through Southeast Asia, South America, Africa, USA, and Oceania. And to just reiterate, we sell through our partners, through these managed service providers and through these telcos to get our software out and used by our customers worldwide. The next slide, please. So over the course of last year and into this year, we had an increase in our software sales of 162% annualized, up from our FY21 numbers. But what we are seeing inside ActivePort Group now is an increased number of partners signing up to sell our software in Australia and around the world. And as you can see from this graph, we're starting to see the hockey sticking effect of customers, potential customers and partners coming to us, doing a proof of concept with our software, seeing what it is capable of doing, and joining up with us to sell our software to theirs. So in Australia, we have 17 partners joined up with us now. That's expected to grow for the rest of this year and continually through the rest of FY22. But we are deploying our SD-WAN and orchestration software in 14 countries around the world right now. So the good thing for us is that the revenue associated with these rollouts will increase over the course of the rest of this financial year and the financial year beyond. And I'm proud to say a very, very small number of our potential customers have come back to us and said, no, we don't wish to pursue a deal with you. We have a very, very high percentage of turning on customers once they've seen our product and once they've seen a proof of concept. So in my last slide, I wanted to go back to the overall, second last slide, our overall position. We have, as I said, services revenue and we have software revenue. Our services revenue is going very, very strongly and very much underpins the company as we grow. We had a very, very strong start to the beginning of the financial year with a bit over $1 million in October. And that's expected to grow as per the graph you can see here through the rest of this financial year. And we expect to do at least in line or outdo the services revenue component for managed services providers in like markets in Australia and around the world. But that forms a strong basis for our revenue growth as our partners sell our software into their customers. So the last point I'll make on the last slide, if I may, just to reiterate, using our software, customers create connectivity, integrate cloud services, manage their hardware on a local, national, or global scale, all from one screen, all from one single pane of glass. And for our customers, what they get from that is simplicity, agility, speed, lower costs, and an opportunity to turn on new revenue streams. So that is ActivePort Group in 10 minutes.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. That was a great presentation. One question, coming out of big corporate into somewhat a smaller environment, are you excited by the opportunity? Was that the size of the prize, understanding some of the pain points that a telco has? Was that, once you saw it, became very clear to you and why it was obvious for you to jump into this role?
Absolutely. One of the things that I wanted to do for years in telco, and I tried to create a software capability like ActivePort several times in my career, is and it's around a 100% focus on customers. Customers, technology users are not as interested in the technology as technology companies sometimes believe. What people want is a piece of software that can help, that can facilitate that end-to-end connectivity and just make it simple for them. If there's one thing I've learned in 20 years of telecommunications and executive is customers just want it to be simple. I saw that opportunity coming into ActivePort. That's why when I was offered the CEO role, I grabbed it with both hands. You can probably tell I remain excited about the opportunity.
Excellent. Now, how competitive is this space and how does ActivePort defend its position?
The market we're in is around automation, orchestration, and software-defined wide area networking. Software-defined wide area networking is competitive. We're up against some big players, Cisco, Fortinet, and others. However, we're finding that there is strong interest in our product to replace some of those big guys. Our stuff is easier to use. It is at a far better price point. It's much more flexible to use. But To our knowledge, there is not another software company out there that produces software-defined networking software for SD-WAN and orchestration and that entire capability in one box. So we remain unique. What that means is you can go with a standard supplier and you only get about 1/10 of what you get when you come with ActivePort. We're very conscious, though, that we have that technology advantage for a year, potentially 18 months. And as Apple have found, and the really big guys, technology advantage lasts so long. The focus on customer makes the really big difference. And we believe with the quality of our software, the ease of use and the simplicity we present, that our product will, there'll be no reason to move our product out of customers' networks and environments once they have it.
One last question. For potential customers from the software part of your business, for potential customers, is it obvious to them when they see the product and the price point that they should jump in, or is there a bit of a gestation period to bring them on?
There's a couple of answers to that. There's a thing we're now starting to call in ActivePort the 40th minute of the presentation. Because we don't fit into a standard model with SD-WAN or orchestration or automation, and talking to people like Gartner, they would like to put us in a box. They'd like to say, well, hang on, we'd like to put you in this magic quadrant or this. So hang on, we're actually across all of that. There is an aha moment for our customers where they say, oh, you can help us with all of this. That's super important for us. And it's the point at which it becomes quite sticky for a customer to realize what we can do. We then need to help them over a period of months to get ready to sell our product from a training perspective, a marketing perspective, and getting their sales team ready to sell, which takes around about a quarter from the first conversation to the moment we turn on revenue. But there is that lovely 40th minute where, you know, very experienced technology leaders and business leaders go, aha, we understand how you can help, please. Welcome, come in.
Great, that was a great presentation. Clearly excited about the opportunity for the company. Karim, thanks for your time and we wish you all the best.
Good one, David. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Now I'd like to introduce NeuroScientific Biopharmaceuticals, ASX code NSB, which has a market cap of approximately $47 million. NeuroScientific is developing novel peptide-based pharmaceutical products that target a number of neurological disorders and diseases of the eye that have high unmet medical need. Joining us is Dr. Alexandra Andrews, Director of Operations. Welcome, Alex.
Hi, David, and thanks for that introduction. Thanks for the opportunity today to run through the NeuroScientific story with your audience. What I want to do today is briefly go through what makes our technology and our target market so attractive, and run you through where we plan to go over the next 6 to 12 months. Next slide, please. To give you an overall snapshot of where we're at and what we're developing, NeuroScientific is developing a novel first-in-class therapeutic drug that can help people living with neurodegenerative diseases, like things like Alzheimer's, dementia, MS, and these are the conditions that currently have very little treatment options available. So we're doing this by developing and commercializing our lead drug candidate, which is called EmptinB. And this is a drug that's able to protect and regenerate neurons while also reducing neuroinflammation. We've got fantastic efficacy data from multiple animal models, which has all been able to show that it significantly benefits models of Alzheimer's disease, glaucoma, and dementia, and multiple sclerosis. Through the course of development of this product, we've conducted over 40 preclinical studies, which have all pointed towards this drug being safe and effective. We've done this, back to that other one, thanks. We've done this through collaboration with our partners, primarily across the US and the UK, but around the world. And we are now getting ready to start our phase 1 clinical trial next year, which we are very well funded for. Next slide, please. The company was listed in 2018 in an oversubscribed IPO. We've got 143.5 million shares on issue. And our largest shareholder is Macrae Investment, which is the large family office of the Clough family. We've got $12.3 million cash in the bank, and that's more than enough to cover all our R&D costs over the next 12 months. Our company was founded by Matt Lidlow and Anton Uvarov. They've both got vast experience in corporate development and capital markets, as well as having scientific backgrounds. We are fortunate enough to have the great Paul Rennie as company chairman. Paul's got a lot of experience and success under his belt when it comes to starting biopharmaceutical companies. He founded and is still chairman of Paradigm Biopharmaceuticals, a company that he took from a startup to a $500 million company. He also played an important role at Mesoblast, where he was the executive VP and COO of new product development. So it's actually he's a bit of an expert, and we are very excited and enthused to have him on board and have his input. Next slide, please. So neurodegenerative diseases is a term that encompasses many diseases, including things like Alzheimer's disease, dementia, multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's, and many more. What's happening in all these diseases is that the neurons themselves are breaking down and dying, and currently there are no treatment options available that can actually stop and repair these nerves from dying. The global market for these conditions is huge. So Alzheimer's disease affects around 55 million people. However, this is likely to be an underestimation. It's the most expensive disease in the US, and currently there's an exorbitantly high demand for more effective treatment options that can actually stop the disease in its tracks and stop people from losing their memory. So this has been a landmark year in the field of Alzheimer's, because in the middle of the year, Biogen had their first Alzheimer's drug approved for an amyloid antibody. So this is the first new drug to be approved in over 20 years. And as a result, we saw Biogen's market cap soar. And it went up to about $40 billion, which is huge. And it's no wonder, considering how much revenue we pulled in from a successful Alzheimer's program. It's estimated that Adulam, which is Biogen's drug, will bring in around $5.5 billion by 2027. On the other hand, we've got MS, and MS is a disease that affects around 2.5 million people. It usually strikes people when they're younger, in their 30s, and it's a progressive disease with increasing disability. The costs for people living with MS are incredibly high, from around $30,000 a year for people with mild MS to over $100,000 a year for people with more severe MS. Global sales for MS drugs in 2020 was about US $22 billion. So big figures there, and there's a significant opportunity to develop better treatment options in these areas, and large pharmaceutical companies are all on the lookout for good assets like ours that can do just that. Next slide, please. To briefly explain how MGB works, we've got the following animation. So you can see here we've got these healthy neurons signaling, firing their signals down those long arms called axons. However, what happens with neurodegeneration is that the structure of these neurons starts to break down. And because neurons can't replicate themselves, we need to repair them before they die. That's what MGB does, and here it comes binding to these receptors, which then activate these intracellular signaling molecules that promote survival and regeneration of that neuron. And that allows the neurons to become healthy and start signaling again. Next slide, please. Okay, so one of the things about clinical research that's really important is to make sure that you do the groundwork before you jump into the next phase. So we have conducted over 40 preclinical studies that have all added to our body of research around MGB. And the data so far has been incredibly promising. So we've been able to show that MGB is able to reduce neuroinflammation, it regenerates damaged neurons, and it's highly neuroprotective. And in animal models of disease, we've shown that it's able to rebuild the myelin in our multiple sclerosis models. It improved cognitive outcomes in Alzheimer's disease models, and it improved the condition of the optic nerve in a glaucoma model. And this is all accompanied by advanced safety data. Next slide, please. Our preclinical program is due to complete soon, allowing us to commence our phase 1 clinical trials in healthy human volunteers early next year. The first trial will be centered around capturing safety data for our neurology program, and it will consist of around 90 healthy human volunteers who will be recruited through our partners at Lignite Clinical Research, based in Perth. Our preclinical IND enabling work in the ocular indication are due to complete late this year, and clinical trials in glaucoma patients are expected to start next year, early next year. So as many of you who have been following the story for a while will know, there have been some delays outside our control. However, we're very pleased to start these 2 clinical trials next year. We're very well placed to do so. As a company, you only get to cross this threshold once, where we are transitioning from being a preclinical company to a clinical stage company. And that's a step that we are very excited to take. Next slide, please. We're pleased to have attracted some of the top research partners from around the world, and we've got an outstanding team of scientific advisors with extensive experience running clinical trials. So it's great to have their input and have them on board. Yeah, next slide, thanks. So to summarise, NSB is developing a peptide-based drug with a broad range of applications across the neurodegenerative disease space, but most focused at the moment on MS, Alzheimer's disease, and glaucoma. We've conducted numerous preclinical studies and have compelling data showing that it stimulates neural survival, neuroprotection, and decreases neuroinflammation, as well as a host of other positive effects. In addition to our very compelling preclinical data, we've got extensive data around the drug's mechanism of action. And this is important as it's the sort of information that big biotech, big pharma are interested in. And so the more attractive we make ourselves to big pharma, the better. And that's all looking really good. So our program is also supported by extremely strong safety data. One of the benefits of being a peptide-based drug is that peptides are generally extremely safe and well tolerated. So very low risk of side effects. What we have here is a high growth stock with multiple inflection points imminent. Neuroinflammation is a very hot topic right now, and we have repeatedly shown that we are very effective at reducing neuroinflammation. If what we're seeing in our rigorous preclinical studies translates into humans, we've got a game-changing drug for people with neurodegenerative diseases. So thank you for your attention, and thanks to Share Cafe for the opportunity to present this in today's webinar. If you have any more questions, please feel free to reach out to either myself or our Managing Director, Matt Lidlow. Our contact details are on the next slide. And I hope this explains the compelling NSB investment proposition.
Great presentation, Alexandra. Really, really good. And clearly an important piece of research being undertaken. First question for me, what attracted you to the company and why are you so excited by what NeuroScientific is doing?
So I come from a science background. I did my PhD in neuroscience a few years ago, and I was just very, very excited and interested about the technology that Matt and Anton and the team have been developing. So the peptide MGB is very novel, and reading through those clinical research papers just ignited my interest and enthusiasm for neuroscience. So yeah, that was what attracted me to the company. Working with a really great team is obviously crucial, and working with people that you can trust, that you know are doing the right thing, and are incredibly smart. So they are the main things that brought me to NSB, and I'm learning a lot about the corporate side of things. So certainly there's a lot going on in the business that is very well run. So it's a great example of how to run a biotech company.
Excellent. Now, we've got a few questions here. What's your update on the multiple sclerosis front?
So we have recently partnered with a CRO based in Canada called Biopharmaceuticals, and they are doing some really advanced imaging work with us in collaboration with this other company called Amica. So this is work that's going to be really focused around the MS preclinical pipeline. And what's happening here is they've got these advanced MRI imaging techniques layered on top with some special software that Amica have developed, and it's able to really distill down into the cellular level of the tissue, so you can see the neuroinflammation as it's actually occurring. So that's where we're at. We've got that partnership, and we are going to start those trials. We're in the process of doing that, and then yeah, the future of MS is looking very promising with our preclinical work to date.
Last question, how do you know it gets to the brain?
So the factors that influence whether a drug gets into the brain are usually its size and polarity. Based on those factors, MGB is able to penetrate, but there's more to it than just that. It actually, our MGB targets these LRP1 receptors, which are transmembrane carriers, active transport through the blood-brain barrier. So it gets through that way, and we've been able to show this and demonstrate it through our animal models. We've shown that it gets through into the CSF, which is the cerebrospinal fluid. And lastly, I think I've forgotten what I was going to say.
That's okay. So you've found a way to use the existing sort of transport mechanism, if you like, of the brain to get it in. So it should be commended on that in the first instance.
And then we will be doing some work in humans as well. That's right. We're going to be doing a small cohort of patients where we'll actually test their CSF to make sure that it does get through in humans.
Great presentation. As we said, a really important piece of research and a big news flow coming over the next 6, 12, 18 months. So we wish you and the team every success. Alex, thanks for your time.
Thanks, David.
Thanks. Next, we have Environmental Clean Technologies, ASX code ECT, which has a market cap of approximately $64 million. Environmental Clean Technologies is in the business of commercialising leading-edge technologies capable of delivering both financial and environmental benefits through the upgrading, recovery, or conversion of low-value or waste resources. Presenting is Glenn Fozard, Managing Director. Glenn, over to you.
Thanks, David. So ECT, we've been operating for about 15 years in this space, and essentially we're developing clean technology that enables the stable transition to net zero. And I guess that's it in a nutshell. If we go to the next slide, there's a standard disclaimer. We'll move through that as well. So company overview, I won't linger too long on this. Obviously, this will be available for everyone to view afterwards. We've got a number of technologies, and we'll go to the next slide. I think that's probably a bit easier to see. So we've got largely 4 technologies in the space, where our purpose in developing these technologies has been about bridging the gap between today's use of resources and tomorrow's zero emission future. So for the last 15 years, we've been developing technologies that have been focusing on taking low rank or waste resources, things like lignite, biomass, waste plastics, and actually converting those with a low emission or zero emission footprint. Our most developed technology is cold dry, and that's a unique drying method where we take the water out of those particular feedstocks like lignite and biomass. That's really important. It sounds really simple, and I guess in a way it is. It's just no one else has been doing it, where we apply low-grade heat so we don't combust anything. In all of the technologies that we apply, we try to keep low temperature. We try to use catalysts the aim of the game in all of this processing of low rank materials is to not allow the carbon to become gaseous. And obviously high temperature tends to have the carbon become gaseous. We like to keep the carbon fixed and physical. That way it's a lot easier to control, and it means it's not contributing to CO2. We've been listed for a while. It's interesting, a lot of people say, well, you know, we're touting all of the, there's a wave of excitement around hydrogen and net zero emission. We take the view that we've been doing this for 15 years and it's finally the market's caught up with our technology. So a lot of the phrases that are touted, we've been taught, cold dry has been net zero emission. That's been our game and that's the most developed technology. Our other technologies, Hydromor, which is a green iron making or a cleaner iron making process. Cogen is about producing hydrogen. And then we have another technology, CDP, which is about turning this waste into diesel. We've spent about 115 mil in developing this technology suite, and we're quite developed. If people are familiar with the TRL scale of development, you'll see that TRL 8 to 9 is where we're literally on the verge of building a commercial plant now. Go to the next slide, please. So at the heart of this, we've got our gateway technology, which is cold dry. That establishes our entry point and that key value proposition to then feeding all the other technologies downstream. It's taking advantage of the traditional methods of drying have always been heating and squeezing, so using a lot of heat, using a lot of pressure. We take a very low energy approach. We've aimed to use low grade waste heat effectively, no combustion, which means then the only emission exposure we have, which is scope 2 emissions, which is the electricity that we use. And for that, we can even produce our own electricity or we can purchase green electricity. Next slide, please. We've just announced, you might, if you've been following our stock, we've announced a couple of weeks back our headline project. That's the net zero emission hydrogen refinery. That's where we're developing and we're finalising the feasibility on putting in place a cold dry front end that will then process both biomass and lignite. Probably to explain this better is we'll go to the next slide and you can see a more visual view of that. We'll go to the next slide, but I'll jump back to this one. So this is the process that we're looking at for our headline project, where we take lignite and waste biomass, we mix them together. That's put through the cold dry process, and then we put it through a hydrogen refinery. Now there's a number of processes inside that. That produces a char, an agricultural grade char, syngas, and a hydrogen heavy stream. We can either produce hydrogen or we can produce formic acid. The reason we choose formic acid at this stage is that the hydrogen infrastructure for distribution and storage isn't there at the moment. So we want to produce something that is a hydrogen carrier. People may have heard, and if you're interested in the hydrogen space, we talk a lot about hydrogen carriers, things like ammonia. Formic acid is a hydrogen carrier. We'll go back to that prior slide if we could. So the whole target here is that we're looking to support the stable transition to net zero. There's a lot of talk about, all the varying colours of hydrogen, green hydrogen, blue hydrogen, all the colour spectrum in between. We're a transition technology. So we believe that, invariably we're going to end up with a pure renewable economy, but that could be 30, 40 years away where that's entirely renewable. In the meantime, we're trying to provide transition technology to then provide economies of size and scale, establish then the commercial, the commercial credentials behind this process. But in doing so, we are targeting performing that in a net zero fashion. So our whole approach is that, you still should be able to use your conventional conventional resources like lignite and biomass and waste plastics, but it should be, and it can be done in net zero fashion. We'll skip to across 2 slides ahead. So the big question is why lignite? Now, we always call it lignite. We call it lignite because we've spent a lot of time researching lignite, so we know what it is. common nomenclature is more brown coal. People call it brown coal. Now, we take the view that, and not just our view, but the views of scientists from Federation University as well and others. Lignite is actually, and if you look at the stats of it, chemically it's closer to compost than it is ever to black coal. And that's why it works so well with what we're doing. It's about 26% plant matter, and it's a very young coal. So the only reason it's ever been called coal is because it's been used like black coal. Now that use has been to just dig it up and burn it for electricity. We think that's the worst way to do it. It's a travesty of such great chemical feedstock that you would try to burn it, whereas we try to break it apart into its chemical components. And we do that with net zero emission. That in doing so and treating it like plant matter and treating it like a biomass, you're able to separate all the really valuable chemical components. And if you do that properly, you can also do it with net zero emission footprint. We'll go to the next slide. Again, this is just another way to see, this is more of an engineering process flow diagram of what we're looking to put in place, our headline project. We'll go to the next slide. One of our product streams isn't just hydrogen, so we are producing hydrogen. In the combination of biomass and lignite, you will end up with approximately half of it being hydrogen heavy syngases, the hydrocarbons that come out, as well as half of it being char. Now, if anyone hasn't seen the documentary already, but I recommend you go and have a watch of Kiss the Earth. It's available on Netflix. It really explains what's coming with regards to soil carbon and the need for us to be able to produce available quantities of carbon for replenishing the carbon stocks of soil for further fertility and for growing food. The difference that what we're doing is we're decoupling ourselves from carbon capture and storage. Now, we don't hold a view as to whether carbon capture and storage is going to work or not, by the very nature of the fact that we're aiming to be net zero emission immediately without the use of carbon capture and storage. So our view is we want to produce large quantities of hydrogen and agricultural char. In fact, our headline project will become the largest producer of agricultural char in Australia, if not the Southern Hemisphere. Go to the next slide, please. We've already established a site for this larger project. You'll see the white dotted lines. That's the site that we've recently purchased as per our ASX announcement. The green dotted lines, that's the site, that's the extension of the site that we need and the extension of the land for the project that we need that we're in negotiation with Energy Australia. Energy Australia owns the Yallourn Power Station, who have scheduled that for shutdown. We're big supporters of shutting down the power station. We think that that's the, it's become, initially it was a great initiative established by Sir John Monash to create the cheapest electricity in Australia, which then made Victoria the manufacturing base of Australia. However, in our modern era, we've grown to learn that that's not the best way to use lignite, and in fact, it contributes to climate change. And so we're supporters of the shutdown of the power station, but we do think that there's a very valuable resource still left in the ground that then can help to drive a hydrogen industry and turn Victoria into the Silicon Valley of hydrogen. Go to the next slide. Again, there's some metrics here that have that sort of help to explain our partners, our budget for the project that we're building, when we're going to commence, and certain feedstocks that we'll be using in the outputs. We'll jump to the next one as well. We'll jump past that one. That's just again showing some of the key projects, the key outcomes. On top of this project that we're doing, we're actually completing a large-scale test facility. So in terms of development and how we've progressed our technology in comparison to our peers in the hydrogen space, we're well ahead of most of these developments. We're finalising the completion of this large-scale test facility. It's also a commercial demonstration facility for our core technology, coal dry. You'll see the diagram there. Most of that's been built. The only thing that's remaining, which we've purchased the equipment of, is the rotary kiln to the far right. That's at Bacchus Marsh, and we should have that ready for commissioning. We're hoping around February next year. Next slide, please. Quick corporate snapshot. We've reinvigorated our board recently. We've got a great chairman, Jason Marenko. He's got great credentials. And we've got also two other directors, Tim Wise and James Blackburn. Ashley Moore is our chief engineer. We're a market cap at the moment of about 65 mil. And yeah, we're pretty excited with the fact that the market wave of excitement around hydrogen and net zero emission has finally caught up to the technology we've been developing for the last 15 years. So it's great.
Glenn, and on that note, and as you say, you're sort of, the wave is rising just as you're hitting that go decision. So while the technology's been advancing over a period, as you mentioned, how serendipitous is the green thematic coming in just at that time when you need it most?
Well, it's great. I mean, yeah, we'd certainly bought into that vision. I mean, that's been at the heart of our purpose for the last, if not 15 years. The purpose statement that I mentioned at the start has been with us since 2013, and every year we review it, and every year we decide that it's not to change. It's been the core of what we've been doing all this time. So yeah, we felt that it was always going to come eventually. My background was Macquarie Bank in structured products, but then I became a ESG stockbroker in the early days, and back then, no one cared about ESG, but it was something you could see, the triple bottom line. It made sense. It had to happen. And here we are today, where it's all locking and loading for everyone.
Perfect timing, as you say. Now, you call it a test facility, but how big is it, and what will some of the outputs be?
I think some of the outputs were mentioned on that single slide, but we're looking at about a 25 to 30,000 tonne production of coal dry. That would mean then using about 60 to 70,000 tonnes of lignite and biomass at the front end, and then that will translate into about 12,500 tonnes of char and the equivalent in syngas, hydrogen-heavy syngas. So when you have a look at, put that in the context of some of the other peers out there sort of developing their demonstration projects where they're talking, hundreds of tonnes, or, we're at that end where that is the last scale for demonstration before you go and build a commercial plant. And our headline project is to build a commercial plant.
Now, we've clearly got some analysts on this call because they're asking very technical questions that I'm hoping you can answer. Will the COH-Gen technology be scaled up in Bacchus Marsh or on-site in Latrobe Valley for H2 production?
It's highly likely that we'll scale it up first at Bacchus Marsh. I mean, that's the purpose of Bacchus Marsh. It is a broader site for R&D. So I would suggest that as we move up the scales at Cogen, we will certainly be looking at Bacchus Marsh as that grounding point, particularly because with a lot of our downstream technologies, Cogen and Hydromore, coal dry is necessary for the front end processing. So we've added a layer of protection to our technology by ensuring that they all link into coal dry, our most developed technology.
Now, I've got a sort of a dual question here on funding.
Yep.
Funding for the test facility, is that in place, or is there a little bit more to go? And on a broader scale, how interested is government and other similar groups interested in funding and granting money to the company, given the leading edge technology that you've developed?
Yeah, I'll answer the second one first. Government interest has skyrocketed, and we've got our work cut out for us, just trying to keep up pace with the grant processes for a lot of grants that are out there now, where we align with and meet the requirements for a good 3 or 4 of them. We started that process with Invest Victoria. That was just a small sort of $2 million low interest loan that was provided. But that's important because once you've got Invest Victoria on side, they help you then walk through the other parts of the state government. We've recently submitted to the H2 Hub Implementation Grant Program. There's a couple of others that are scheduled to come out, of which now we've got a very well developed, let's call it a feasibility pack that can be slotted into most of these. The one thing that stands out when we talk to government is that we do tick a lot of the boxes. We still have to deal with the elephant in the room that we're taking lignite from the ground and mixing it with biomass. That's something we can't get away from. But again, we're a transition technology. We see that there's great benefit in being able to do, take advantage of that valuable resource in the ground, but do so in a net zero emission fashion. So a lot of government interest at many levels across many departments, whether that's resources or energy or environment. We're getting a lot of interest from government, there's no doubt about it. In terms of the funding, we're funded for the development. Our cash in bank is sufficient to continue to develop Bacchus Marsh. And so that's not a particular issue, but we're focusing now on the next stage of growth, funding now the headline project. That's going to require some more funding. But that being said, we've got a lot of availability of funding now because we've got deep in the money options that are sitting on our market, our ECTOEs. So in terms of access to funding, we're not that concerned at this stage. We believe that now the market has recognised where we sit inside this hydrogen space and this net zero emission space. And from there, we'll just keep on developing and sticking to our knitting. And our strategy hasn't really changed that much over the last 2 years. So we're just going to keep pushing ahead, finish off the demonstration project and the test facility at Bacchus Marsh, and push ahead in completing feasibility at Latrobe Valley.
Great, thanks for that, Glenn. Clearly a great thematic and a sound technology coming into that thematic at the exact right time. So we wish you all the best. Glenn, thanks for your time.
Thanks a lot.
Last but by no means least, we have TZ Limited, ASX code TZL, market cap of approximately $28 million. TZ has successfully commercialised proprietary locking technology in the smart locker and data cabinet security markets. Presenting is Mario Vecchio, CEO. Mario, over to you.
Thanks, David. And thanks, everybody, for your patience. I appreciate your time. Please, David, move to the next slide. I'll give everyone an update on TZ and where we're at. Standard disclaimer, I won't go into that. In a basic nutshell, we are an engineering software company centered around access and control of physical spaces. And that's the core premise of what we do, and I'll explain what that actually means in a moment. So next slide, please. TZ make physical smart locking devices and software that manages large-scale environments in that space. So at its core level, we open and close lock spaces. Sounds simple, but it's actually, as I'll explain, it is complicated, and the smarts are always in the software. Next slide, please. The good news about TZ is that around 60% of our revenue comes from the US, and we have the bluest of blue chip companies. So companies like Apple, Microsoft, Google, Juniper, Cisco, Netflix. I can go on and on with the type of blue chip customers that we have, and that's a testament to the technology. To try and get your software and your technology into these big tech companies, there's no easy feat, and we've been able to do that and do that at scale. So it really is a testament to where our technology is at right now. Next slide, please. I'm going to go through use cases. I'm only going to pick one of those use cases, but you can see our use cases from day storage, from asset management, postal retail. Universities is quite large for us. Health and medical, Alex, if you're still listening, is very large for us in chain of custody for for large-scale health labs, first responders, and obviously data centers. Next slide, please. One of the first steps that I did when I joined TZ is because we make our own locking devices, and those devices are patented worldwide. No one has anything even close to what we have from a technology perspective. However, we still are a very small part of the overall smart locking market. And so what I did is I've opened up our whole software platform for the global smart lock vendors to come in and get access to our TZ core. And just to give an example of that, we recently won a large project at Netflix in their Silicon Valley location. And they were using someone else's smart locking technology. Software couldn't do what they needed to do. They invited us in. We showed them what we're able to do. They selected us. And now that partner who supplies other locking technologies has taken us into new and further opportunities of customers that we would never have addressed before. So opening up our software has been quite critical to the success of us growing our business quicker than we have been. Next slide, please. And this just shows our Device Connect software stack. We're getting a range of large global smart lock vendors and IoT vendors that are wanting to connect into the TZ core system, and that allows us new channels, new customers, and new revenue streams to market. Next slide, please. So at a software development level, at a product level, we are currently inundated with customer requests, and I'll explain what's driving that in a moment. We're inundated from customer requests about wanting new use cases, new changes, new features to our software platform for them to use in their businesses. And so we're scaling up our software development teams right now. I've just put in a new center in India and scale that up for a specific skill set. And at the same time, we're modularizing our software and simplifying the deployment of our software, so that as we simplify the deployment of our software, the more customers come onto our cloud, and we gain customers at greater scale. We're also modularizing our software so that therefore we can charge for features instead of entire software stacks. And so that's another piece we're doing. The other thing that we're doing is we're migrating from a perpetual license environment to a software as a service license. And that was the first thing I did when I joined a bit over a month ago. All the perpetual licenses are closed. We've discontinued for new customers. Obviously for existing customers, that's different. But we are in the process now of migrating customers from perpetual licenses into software as a service licenses. So therefore, annuity revenue streams. And we're doing that in two ways. Firstly, all functionality that gets built on our new software stack is only software as a service, and none of the new features migrate back into the perpetual license stack. So if they want new features, if customers want new features, they need to move to the new software, and ultimately we'll take our existing perpetual license software to end of life and migrate our customers over to SaaS licenses from there. The Device Connect I've already talked about, and then we're investing in our UX and UI platforms once again for ease of use, for simplicity, and once we when we get better and better at that, we find that we get more and more customers coming into our environment. Next slide, please. Sorry, I already explained this. But the existing model was perpetual licenses, one-off fees, and I'm sure most of you are aware today that what a multi-term software license, a SaaS license model is. And we'll have three models of that. One will be customers could take a 12-month software license, either paid annually in advance or quarterly in advance. They can take a 3-year license, or a 5-year license. So that's how we're migrating our existing customers to a SaaS service. Next slide, please. Our device business will continue to remain in the device business, but will only develop high-value devices where we can maintain a margin of over 50%. Our software, on an annuity basis, our margin will be maintained at around 80%. So we see that these two assets that we have are high, not only recurring revenue, but high margin parts of our business for us. Next slide, please. This slide, I've split this up. This slide is our APAC business and what's happening with our annuity licenses and where we're at with our annuity licenses and the expansion that we're seeing in our pipeline. If you go to the next slide, I've separated out the US separately because it is, as I say, it's about 60% of our business. And this is something that won't be difficult for us to transition our customers to. Many of our customers invented software as a service. The US market is well tuned to software as a service, so we don't see any pushback from our customers on that. Next slide, please. These are recent software as a service sales only, so software contracts only. So Netflix, which I mentioned earlier, Apple just did a large upgrade. We just won a contract at Starbucks, CSL here in Melbourne, and Chevron for Asia Pacific. We've won a large contract with them as well. So you can see that our customer base is very blue chip customer base and a large corporate customer base. Next slide, please. Our pipeline has grown significantly, and I'd like to tell you that it was because of my genius, but actually it's because of the tailwinds that the company is seeing, which I'll explain in the next few slides. But this is just an example of some of the companies that we're in negotiations with for contracts for our services. Next slide, please. And if you just go to the next slide. So you'll see we currently have a pipeline of around $90 million. And the grey area is the pipeline that we had for the same period last year. And so our pipeline has grown by about 400% over the last really 6 months, more than probably closer to 12 months. So I'll explain why that's happened and why we've got those tailwinds. Next slide, please. And that is because change is here, and the change was already happening, but it got collapsed by COVID. And let me explain the key areas that COVID collapsed the speed of how that change happened and how it's impacted our business. Firstly, e-commerce. We all know e-commerce. It is absolutely mainstream. It's not going away. The more e-commerce that happens, the more business that we get from our customers. The next slide, the next is the hybrid workplace or agile workplace. And this is where we put lockers into corporate offices. And I'll give you an example. One of the examples is Westpac in Sydney. So today, if you wanted to if you're a Westpac employee, you wanted to go into Westpac, you actually have to book in through their reservation system. And once you've booked in through their reservation system, you are then assigned a physical locker space where you can put your assets and keep your assets. You'll be assigned a desk, perhaps a meeting room. If you're having a meeting, you'll be assigned access in and out of the building. You'll be assigned to particular IT services. Once you're there, once you're gone, all of those services get disconnected until you come back again. And what we're seeing is our corporate customers scaling back their footprint of commercial size of businesses, of their physical spaces, but expanding it into a flexible workspace. So that Westpac example is being replicated all over the world as we see it right now. And the basic premise of that is we've all had to go work from home. A portion of us will stay working from home. I don't think anyone knows what that portion is today, whether it's going to be 10%, 20%. I guess time will tell. But the people, and some obviously need to be in the office full time for whatever their tasks are and whoever they work for. But there's a high proportion of people that will only go back into the office maybe 2 days a week, 4 days a week, 4 days a month, whatever it might be. So that agile workspace and hybrid workplace is a boom business for us. Having our software integrated into all of these corporate customers is the key advantage that we have with our customers globally. The next area is contactless and asset management. And let me just give you a quick example of this. We just did a deal with WestTrac and Caterpillar. WestTrac is the big Caterpillar dealer, the largest Caterpillar dealer in the Southern Hemisphere. And we all know Caterpillar because they make big machines for mines and construction and what have you. We work with them to take all of their spare parts that a human can pick up. So obviously they have spare parts that are very large and no human can actually pick up and take away. And we put in a process where their customers can go onto their app, buy whatever parts they need. Maybe it's a broken part, maybe it's a maintenance scheduled part. And they're distributing physical lock spaces, lockers and big caged areas across the country where their customers can say, I need this part. And it goes into the Caterpillar system, the order gets processed, stock gets allocated, the stock gets shipped to wherever the closest location is for them. And then the end customer can go and collect their part whenever they want to, at whatever time they want to. So it really is about A, contactless, and B, being able to manage assets. So therefore, Caterpillar and WestTrac can invoice that customer when the goods have gone, collect the money, whatever it might be. Obviously, the devices that we use in there, we also use IoT devices in there for measuring and monitoring a range of different environmental issues. So we're doing that. So I use that as an example as click and collect on an industrial scale. John Deere is another company that we've just signed up in the US for very similar parts distribution and easy access from a contactless basis. You can take that contactless view all the way down to retail and see the use cases that can apply for us. We have customers doing contactless inside corporations for managing broken IT assets, or we have the largest chip manufacturer in the world doing it for quality control of measuring the quality of their products. As I say, we've got it in medical areas as well. And the last important piece is to be able to do this in a highly secure fashion so that you have a chain of custody that can be guaranteed and secured. And you don't get into Apple's IT infrastructure or Microsoft's or Netflix, for that example, if you don't have world-class software and technology that is highly secure. So they're the things that are driving our business, and the reason that our pipeline has expanded substantially over the last 12 months, and the areas that we're focusing on. Next slide, please. So the core areas for us in our growth is the functionality that we're adding to our existing software platform with all the use cases that our customers demand from us. We're making it simpler for customers to use and simpler for companies to operate as well. And then we've changed our business model from one-time license fees to annuity license fees. And that really kicked in about 4 weeks ago. So that's the areas that I'm focused on and what we're doing as a business. Next slide, please. And David, back to you.
Thanks, Mario. A great presentation. Just a quick one. You've talked about the changing nature of the business model and your contractual terms. What sort of reaction have you had from customers? And is it sort of a case of, look, guys, you've got it in the system now and it's too hard for you to change. So these are our new contractual terms, and that's what it is.
Well, for new customers, it's not a problem, right? They get it. For existing customers, we really haven't had much pushback yet. But then again, we've only been at it for a bit over a month, right? Or maybe about 6 weeks now. So I haven't seen any major pushback yet, remembering that most of our business sits in the US and they are very accustomed to this. And so when you say, well, yeah, we'll develop new features, but it's going to be over here on this on this SaaS platform in our cloud, eventually they come around. So we haven't had that much of an issue yet.
Now, talking about features, obviously COVID and the environment and supply chains, work from home, all of those things are our new normal, regardless of what COVID or restrictions lifting in the future may give. But that is our new normal. Have customers asked for new features, new add-ons that maybe you hadn't thought about that will become part of the new product suite?
Yeah, look, we're getting asked for the craziest of things. And let me give you one example. In the US, fast food chain, can't tell you who it is, but fast food chain, global organisation. We all know that the last mile service for Uber Eats or Menulog or what have you works very well. You order your Uber Eats, and as long as the Uber Eats guy doesn't eat your food by the time he gets it to you, he gets it to you. But actually, the back end of that process is broken. And what I mean by that is the Uber Eats guy goes into the fast food store. He has to actually go inside, grab the Uber Eats order or orders, and then has to deliver it. So what we're doing with a partner is we're putting hot and cold physical spaces on the outside of these fast food chain stores. We've just about finished the trial on it, so that the fast food company can put their hot food in one locker space, cold drinks in the other. The Uber guy shows up. He's got his QR code with his PIN number. He knows he can go to this space. He can't stuff it up because that's what happens. Sometimes they take the wrong order and you get delivered the wrong food. So there can't be a screw up of that. But also then the fast food company knows it's been delivered. There's no argument about whether it was taken or not. And also they know how long the food has been in that warm locker, because after whatever their time frame is, it needs to be replaced, right? Right now they can't really measure that. So that I find one of the interesting ones that's come out for us. But it is this whole, we all know the supply chain is currently broken around the world. But what's also happening is all of COVID has completely disrupted the logistics way logistics works. It's been an industry that's been pretty much the same for probably 40 years. But it is completely getting revolutionised right now. And we are a part of that.
Now, obviously, I'm not asking you to give a forecast, but you talk to a pipeline. What degree of comfort do you have in terms of the ability for that pipeline to drop into contracted revenues?
Yeah, good question. If I look at history, we typically close around 40% of what's sitting in our pipeline, but I'm getting more, basically, I'm getting tighter about what gets in that pipeline, and that will increase I'm hoping to get a close rate of over 50% in that pipeline coming into the new year. But traditionally right now it's around 40% of the pipeline. But I'm hoping to up that up through a number of different methods.
And lastly, when you bring a group in like Netflix or Westpac, I assume they come in at sort of a certain level to test the system and make sure it works and delivers. But how have you seen historically growth within a brand once you've contracted a brand? Yeah,
look, I think there's it's really interesting. and TZ's been around for a while, but I think in some ways TZ was ahead of its time, right? And it had a market, but the market was small. And but now, with what COVID's done to us all, it has accelerated that up now, whereas people are saying, okay, I want to put it in this particular office, and now I want to scale it around the world. We haven't had much of that, in the past 5 years, but we're now seeing a company like Microsoft, for example, that's saying, okay, here's the roadmap of when you're going to deploy these across these offices around the world, right? So history doesn't show that, but future points to showing that right now.
Are there any, all businesses at the moment who are trying to scale globally have breaks in terms of their ability to deploy units or deploy? Are you seeing any issues there in terms of the manpower required to deploy?
In some cases, yes, we do. But we've got a pretty good network of installers and people who deploy all that stuff. And we get, and I'm intentionally moving the business out of that part of the deployment phase where we'll say, here's the software, here's all the devices, here's the electronics, because we've got a bunch of electronics as well. And you guys fit it into your office the best way you want. So, for example, Apple does all its own, in typical Apple fashion, they do it all. They just take all of our electronics, our software, our locks, and do the rest themselves, right? Which is fine by us. And so it's a mixed bag right now. But we are seeing, human resource constraints in different parts of the world, absolutely.
Size of the prize, massive. Clearly, COVID and the restrictions and supply chain changes have caused a business like yours to be pushed to the front of the queue when it comes to deployment of products and services. Clearly an opportunity ahead, and we'll be watching with interest the pipeline as it drops into the revenue. Mario, thanks for your time and a great presentation.
Thank you, David.
Thanks everyone for being part of this Share Cafe ASX Hidden Gems webinar today. I hope you found a hidden gem, and at the very least, you'll put a few of these companies onto your watch list to keep an eye on as they execute their plans for the future. Enjoy your weekend, everybody, and we'll be back next week, same time, same place.